A tense night has reshaped the battlefield in Eastern Europe. In the span of hours, coordinated strikes were reported across multiple regions of Ukraine, targeting key energy and military infrastructure and raising fresh concerns about stability. As the situation unfolded, President Volodymyr Zelensky held an urgent call with Donald Trump, signaling rapid diplomatic movement behind the scenes. With Donbas still at the heart of negotiations, the stakes are rising fast. Subscribe now for real-time updates and in-depth analysis. A coordinated wave of strikes lit up the skies across Ukraine, marking one of the most expansive operations in recent weeks. According to Russian outlet reports on February 26th, military forces launched combined attacks targeting infrastructure in at least 9 regions, including Kyiv, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Poltava, Odessa, and Vinnytsia. Ukrainian officials confirmed multiple impacts on energy facilities, with the Kyivska 750 substation, an important transmission hub linking the Rivne nuclear power plant to the capital, reportedly sustaining damage. In Zaporizhzhia, fires were recorded at storage facilities following drone activity, while in Poltava, regional authorities acknowledged disruptions affecting gas infrastructure. Ukraine's Air Force stated that more than 100 aerial threats were detected overnight, with the majority intercepted, though several reached designated targets. Military analysts note that such coordinated operations typically combine long-range missiles and unmanned systems to strain air defense coverage and disrupt logistics simultaneously. While assessments of structural damage are ongoing, the strikes underscore a continued focus on energy resilience as winter pressures remain a factor. Officials in Kyiv say restoration crews were deployed immediately, emphasizing that stabilization efforts remain underway even as security concerns persist. When the secure line lit up, it wasn't routine diplomacy. It was a pivotal moment. As tensions escalated on multiple fronts, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Joe Biden held an urgent phone call aimed at stabilizing a rapidly shifting battlefield and reinforcing strategic alignment. According to official readouts released by both governments, the conversation focused on immediate defense needs, battlefield updates, and the continuity of U.S. assistance. Since 2022, the United States has committed over $75 billion in total support to Ukraine, including more than $44 billion in security assistance, as confirmed by U.S. government reports. The call underscored Washington's continued backing while emphasizing coordination with NATO allies and oversight of aid flows. Beyond funding, the leaders reportedly discussed air defense systems, ammunition supply chains, and long-term security guarantees. The urgency reflected more than short-term tactics. It signaled geopolitical stakes that stretch far beyond Eastern Europe. In high-level diplomacy, tone matters. This call was not symbolic. It was strategic, deliberate, and closely watched by capitals around the world. Is deterrence holding or quietly eroding? That question now dominates high-level discussions from European capitals to Washington policy circles. As the conflict stretches into a protracted phase, analysts are reassessing whether current measures are sufficient to prevent further escalation while maintaining stability. Strategic deterrence rests on capability, credibility, and communication. According to the 2024 U.S. Department of Defense report, Russia maintains approximately 1,550 deployed strategic nuclear warheads, consistent with the limits established under the New START framework prior to its suspension. Meanwhile, NATO collectively represents over 3 million active-duty personnel across member states, underscoring the alliance's conventional strength. Yet deterrence is not measured in numbers alone. Since 2022, the United States has rotated additional forces to Eastern Europe, increasing troop presence on NATO's eastern flank to reinforce alliance commitments. Defense spending among European NATO members reached a record $380 billion in 2023, according to alliance data, with more countries surpassing the 2% GDP benchmark. The debate is not about aggression, it is about balance. Policymakers are weighing how to maintain credible defense postures without triggering unintended consequences. In strategic terms, deterrence is a signal, and every signal now carries global implications. If there is one region that holds the key to any future agreement, it is Donbas. Stretching across eastern Ukraine and comprising the Donetsk Oblast and Luhansk Oblast, this industrial heartland has become the focal point of diplomatic deadlock and battlefield intensity alike. Before 2014, Donbas accounted for roughly 16% of Ukraine's GDP and a significant share of its coal and steel production, according to Ukrainian economic data. Since the outbreak of conflict that year, the region has experienced profound disruption. Following Russia's 2022 annexation claims, widely rejected by the international community, Moscow asserted control over large portions of these territories, though front lines remain contested. Population shifts underscore the stakes. The United Nations estimates that millions have been displaced internally or across borders since 2022, with eastern regions bearing substantial humanitarian strain. Infrastructure damage in Donetsk and Luhansk has been documented extensively by international monitoring bodies. Diplomatically, Donbas represents more than geography. It is a question of sovereignty, security guarantees, and long-term regional balance. Any negotiated framework, ceasefire, autonomy arrangement, or broader settlement ultimately circles back to this territory. In the calculus of peace, Donbas is not a side issue. It is the hinge upon which everything turns. Beyond the front lines and diplomatic corridors lies a quieter, more painful reality: the human cost. As the conflict grinds on, humanitarian agencies warn that the crisis is deepening, with civilians and prisoners of war caught in the cross-current of geopolitics. According to the United Nations, more than 10,000 civilians have been confirmed killed in Ukraine since 2022, with thousands more injured, figures described as conservative due to verification limits in active combat zones. The UNHCR reports that over 6 million Ukrainian refugees remain abroad, while millions more are internally displaced. Equally sensitive is the issue of prisoners of war. The International Committee of the Red Cross has repeatedly called for full access to POWs on both sides under the Geneva Conventions, emphasizing humane treatment and transparency. Periodic prisoner exchanges have taken place, often mediated quietly, offering rare moments of relief amid prolonged tension. Humanitarian corridors, aid convoys, and medical evacuations have become lifelines. Yet access remains uneven, particularly in heavily contested areas. In strategic discussions, maps and military metrics dominate. But in humanitarian terms, the true measure of this conflict is displacement, separation, and uncertainty, realities that no ceasefire headline can instantly resolve. The battlefield is no longer static. It is evolving in real time. As operations continue, both sides have adjusted strategy, technology, and tempo in response to changing conditions on the ground. Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive, concentrated in the southern axis toward the Zaporizhia Oblast and areas near the Sea of Azov, aimed to disrupt supply corridors and regain key territory. According to open-source battlefield assessments and statements from Ukraine's general staff, several villages were recaptured during the early phases, though progress proved incremental amid layered defensive lines. A defining feature of this phase has been the expansion of drone warfare. Data compiled by defense analysts indicate that thousands of unmanned aerial systems have been deployed by both sides since 2022, transforming reconnaissance and strike capabilities. Western-supplied systems, including advanced air defense platforms, have also altered aerial dynamics, reducing the effectiveness of certain long-range attacks. Meanwhile, Russia has adapted with fortified trench networks, expanded electronic warfare usage, and increased reliance on precision-guided munitions. The tempo has shifted from rapid advances to attritional maneuvering. This is no longer a war defined solely by territory. It is increasingly a contest of logistics, technology, and endurance, where tactical adaptation may determine strategic outcomes. What happens on the battlefield does not stay on the battlefield. It reverberates through Europe's energy grid. Since 2022, the conflict has fundamentally reshaped the continent's energy architecture, forcing governments to rethink supply chains once considered stable. Before the crisis, Russia supplied roughly 40% of the European Union's natural gas imports, according to the European Commission. By 2023, that figure had dropped below 15% as Europe accelerated diversification efforts. Liquefied natural gas imports surged, particularly from the United States and Qatar, while pipeline flows through routes such as Nord Stream 1 were halted. Energy prices spiked dramatically in 2022, with benchmark European gas prices at one point rising more than 300% year over year, according to market data. Governments responded with subsidy packages worth hundreds of billions of euros to shield households and industry. At the same time, renewable deployment accelerated. The EU added a record 56 gigawatts of solar capacity in 2023, reflecting a strategic pivot toward long-term resilience. This is no longer just a regional conflict. It is an energy inflection point. Europe's recalibration is reshaping alliances, trade flows, and economic strategy. proving that power in this crisis is measured as much in megawatts as in military metrics. From urgent diplomacy to deterrence debates, from Donbas to energy realignments, every layer of this crisis reveals a broader geopolitical transformation. The battlefield is only one dimension. Strategy, economics, and endurance are equally decisive. So where does this conflict move next? Escalation, stalemate, or negotiation? Share your perspective in the comments. If you found this analysis valuable, like the video and subscribe for deeper updates. Thank you for watching and see you in the next report.